offensive coordinator for a couple of Super Bowl champion teams with the 49ers. He was the coach of the Packers when they won a Super Bowl. You know what, Drapes, is interesting. Mike Holmgren coached the Packers. They won a Super Bowl, got back the next year and fell to the Broncos. He also was a coordinator for the 49ers when they won a Super Bowl and then went back and won the next one. So, I mean, there's a guy that would probably say, Super Bowl hangover, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't a problem for him, some of the teams he was with.
Yeah, he went back, exactly. And I just remember Mike when he was coach of the Packers. I used to work in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and, those
so he's your guy, right?
Nah, because I was a Cowboys fan back then. Troy Aikman was my guy at the time, and so Jimmy Johnson and those guys. And Coach is listening, I'm sure, right now.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, you mentioned the Cowboys. I don't want to deal with those guys.
Yeah. Mike Holmgren joining us here, won a Super Bowl ring as head coach of the Packers, 2 Super Bowl rings as OC for the 49ers, one of only 7 coaches to take 2 different teams to the Super Bowl. And Coach Holmgren is going to be inducted into the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame November 13th at SAP Center in San Jose. The event, benefiting Special Olympics Northern California and high school sports programs. Coach, welcome to the Drive, guys. Can you just tell us, sir, what the heck happened to the 49ers on Sunday?
I don't know. I have trouble talking about the Seahawks up here often enough, but no. You know what I think happens, and I experienced it, and injuries. 49ers are really good. They're really good, but a couple of their key players are not playing, and that changes things. You don't want to say it changes things a lot, but sometimes it can. I don't think you have to worry about the team. I think they got a great coach, and they have talent, and they'll get a turn. They'll fix whatever needs fixing.
Hey, Coach. Conversely, I'm looking at the Seahawks 3-0. How good are they? Is their 3-0 record real?
Well, you know what? They had a good schedule to start the season. I met the new coach, Mike McDonald. He's a really dedicated, smart, young guy. I just got to get him to smile a little bit more, but he's a serious guy. He's a great defensive mind, I think. And right now they've been a little bit fortunate in the first 3 games. And then when everyone was worried a little bit about the Miami game, and then their quarterback Tua gets hurt. And so it's worked out. You couldn't ask for a better start to a season, but you go 3-0, you got to give them credit, because they haven't lost a game yet.
Mike Holmgren is with us again. Mike is going to be inducted into the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame November 13th. For tickets, sjsa.org/HOF. And Coach, speaking of that Rams 49ers game, I know this wasn't the first time we've had this matchup, but what's it like for you to see, Mike Shanahan's son coaching against John McVay's grandson when you spend so much time with John McVay and Mike Shanahan?
I know. I mean, it's. Are you saying I'm old?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just wondering what you're saying about it. Yeah.
No, you know what? I am old, but it's like when I was broadcasting the Super Bowl for Westwood One, and one of my jobs was interviewing both head coaches. And at the time, Sean came in, and I remember him running around when he was a little guy at the 49er practices and so on. And I go, wow, I am old. Holy Toledo, look at this. But, both of those guys, first of all, Sean's grandfather, was really instrumental in the 49er success, along with Bill Walsh, of course. And then, Mike and I competed against each other a lot. And then to see his son take over, I have 4 daughters, and they're football faces. I mean, they know their game, and they've always yelled at me that they could have been a coach. Why wasn't I coming in as a coach with your legacy and so on? I said I wasn't ready to break that barrier right then. But those guys have done a marvelous job on their own. Mm-hmm. They're really good coaches.
Hey, Coach, one thing we were talking about earlier in the show was your coaching tree. I said, before there was Bill Belichick, you had Mike Holmgren, and I'm looking at some of the coaches that have come under your tutelage. What do you make of Andy Reid and what he's been able to do for his career? Obviously success in Philly, and now just, what he's doing in Kansas City with 3 Super Bowls.
Well, I couldn't be happier for him. He is really a special guy. and we have a long history. Excuse me. We when I was coaching at BYU, I was in charge of the graduate assistant coaches, and there were 6 guys there that were still in school, had finished playing, but they wanted to become, regular coaches down the road. And Andy was one of those guys. And so, right away, if nothing else, I'm a pretty good judge of talent. And he was very bright. I loved his personality. And I helped him get his first couple of jobs. And I said, if I ever get a head job, I'm going to hire you. I'm going to reach out. And I was able to do that in Green Bay. And now I couldn't be, every once in a while, we don't talk a lot, but after a big win, I might text him and say, nice going. After the playoff wins prior to the Super Bowl last year, I texted him and said, hey, you did a great job, but do some with your mustache. It's getting a little crazy. And you do these press conferences and you look like a crazy person. And then he's texting me back and he goes, you know what? I noticed that. And he trimmed it up nicely. He still listens to me.
Wow. Mike Holmgren with us. Mike Holmgren was briefly one of the coaches at my alma mater, San Francisco State.
Oh, really?
Yes, among other things. Mike, I know that you could spend 6 hours at least answering this next question, but if you can dumb it down for us, the wide zone offense that the Niners run now, and so many teams run, how does it differ from the West Coast you guys run? Are there some similarities there?
There are some similarities, but the idea of empty formations and the shotgun, those are differences. We didn't do that so much. Mm-hmm. We also played with the fullback a lot. Now the 49ers do that because they have really a good fullback, but most teams don't now. And then a lot of times they talk about the RPOs. The run pass option that's coming off. I told our quarterbacks, I said, listen, the play I call, I really like. And so if you change it, your play had better work, And so, but now it's a different deal now. And it's exciting. The thing is this season though, it seems like the numbers aren't as big as they've been, and so it's interesting.
Coach, obviously you coach some great quarterbacks. If you will, just what do you like from Brock Purdy so far in his, second full season as the starter here in San Francisco?
I like everything. I like everything. I thought, I always felt if I could get my hands on a quarterback, I don't know how much better I could make him, but I can get him to play as well as he can play. And that's, I think, what Kyle has done with Brock. Now, having said that, the young man, if he wasn't drafted where he was drafted, people wouldn't go, oh my goodness, what's happening? Because he wins the games, he throws with accuracy, he makes great decisions. He's a good leader. He's a pretty normal young man, and he's popular with his teammates. I mean, he's the real deal. I couldn't be more proud of him. And I don't know him. I've never met him, but boy, he's an impressive guy to me at that position.
Mike Holmgren with us. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm not sure how much you got to see last night, but I'm wondering what you thought of Jaden Daniels and his coming out party last night against Cincinnati.
No, I read about it today. I did not see it, but he, clearly he's the real deal too. And I think, listen, I'm thinking of the young man in Carolina, who has had a rougher road. It depends, like in Brock Purdy going to San Francisco, or Jaden, going to places that the coach is the right coach, his teammates are the right teammates. It's the fit is really good, and then you can have success with most quarterbacks you draft. As long as the owner stays out of it. The owner shouldn't come in and say, well, I want to do this. And I think that happened a little bit in Carolina.
Yeah, and staying with that theme, Coach, when you look at quarterbacks now, guys are being thrown right into the spotlight. You look at Caleb Williams. You mentioned Bryce Young and Carolina. Back in the day, it seemed like, you could sit on the bench, hold the clipboard for a few years. What are you seeing with young quarterbacks here lately?
Well, what you said it very well. And I was always I felt that if he's talented and you draft him high in the first round, he's going to be your quarterback. When does he get in the game? I had to play Favre earlier because Don Majkowski, who was the quarterback, got hurt. And then we went through some crazy times together early on, but then he kind of gets it. But I think that if you can protect him and you can kind of control, you're the play caller and control the type of offense you're asking him to run, playing the game, they learn faster than sitting on the bench and watching. And so I was always a proponent of that. Sometimes that's not the way it is. So you go with the veteran, knowing that the guy you drafted, and the veteran knows it too, is eventually going to come in and take over.
Yeah, you mentioned Don Mikowski. People forget about him, the Magic Man. He was good, wasn't he, Coach? He was a good quarterback.
Yeah, he before I got to Green Bay, he was the guy. Mm-hmm. And then, I remember the second game we played Minnesota in the first game. They beat us. They were pretty good. We were getting there. The second game we played Tampa, and he throws 3 interceptions in the first half. And I put Favre in the game. The only problem was Favre didn't memorize the plays, and he kind of had fun out there, but he didn't know what was happening. And then I said, Don, you're the quarterback. He was mad.
Yeah.
But I said, you can't start the game that way. I'm sorry. You can't start the game. The other guy's playing. And so then he got hurt in the third game, and then Favre came in and played 16 years of not coming out of a game.
Wow.
Mike Holmgren joining us. Mike, tell me about those Packers teams, in the mid-'90s. When I look at football now, and it just popped into my head, I don't see the same kind of rivalries, Packers-Cowboys, Packers-Niners. Why do you think that is? Are teams just not facing each other as much in the postseason like you guys did in the 90s?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But listen, those rivalries were special. I mean, the Packers, when we were getting good, Dallas was already good, and we had a tough time beating them. But then when we got over the hump, then we kind of took over, and we were good for a while. And we had rivalries with San Francisco, big rivalries. And then the division, Minnesota was always a big rivalry. Yeah. The Bears, of course, the Packers and the Bears. I remember going to lunch in Green Bay my second week there. I'm walking down the aisle, and before my family moved in, I'm walking down the aisle to get lunch, and here comes a little old lady, 80 years old, and she's moving her cart right in my way, and I'm trying to get around her, and she comes up and bangs me with the cart, and she goes, "You're the new coach, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." "Listen, I don't care what happens, but you got to beat those blankety-blank Bears." I go, "Okay, I get it. This is important to these people."
Yeah.
Those are great rivalries, though. You know what? We had fun, and they really meant. I think I don't know. I get the same feeling sometimes, though. It's different now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Mike Holmgren joining us. He's going to be inducted into the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame November 13th, SAP Center in San Jose. Robert Guerrero, Kerry Walsh Jennings, also part of that class. Tickets, sjsa.org/HOF. It's a benefit for Special Olympics Northern California and high school sports programs. And Coach, speaking of high school sports, is it true that in your mind the highlight of your career was a victory you gained as a coach at Sacred Heart High School in San Francisco?
You know what? I'm not kidding. It was. Wow. People ask me, how about Super Bowls and all that? I said, no, I'll tell you the best game. Because I started out, I was a great coach early on. You know that. But I started out, we were 0-22. My first 22 games as a high school coach, because we had a bunch of scrappy little guys. The other teams had Dan Fouts, Lynn Swan. That Catholic League in the Bay Area is tough.
Did you think about quitting? Did you ever come close to hanging it up?
I did on the after 22. I went in, and my good friend was the head coach, and he talked to me into coming there and helped me. And then he's going to be at the banquet, by the way, which I'm very happy about. But I said, I don't think I can do this. This Lucen is too. And he goes, "Hey, give it one more year. Give it one more year, and then we'll see." So I did. And then in the third game of that season, the third year, we played a team in San Jose and drove down there and won the game. And the feeling of winning the game after playing so many close games, the parents were crying. I was crying. The players were crying. I go, oh. So I can remember that game like it was yesterday. And it kept me in coaching, actually.
Wow.
Man, Mike Holmgren joining us. Mike, when you look at, your time in Seattle, and if I'm correct, you still live up in that area. Can you just describe, the success you had helping to build that and then handing it off to Pete Carroll? What was it like during that time?
Well, it's a special place up here. And, people ask me on the radio now, when the 49ers play, as an example, the Seahawks, who you're rooting for. And I said, well, I hired people at both places. The same thing when we play Green Bay. I just want to see no one get hurt and see good football, And so the Seahawks, for me, taking something that was a little bit broken. Mm-hmm. I learned this about myself, taking something a little bit broken and trying to fix it. That was kind of in my DNA, like in Green Bay and then in Seattle. And then when we got to be good, it took a couple years in Seattle. And then we built a new stadium, which is a very, very, you guys know this, very, very difficult place to play for an opponent. Yeah. And, it was special. My last game there in the stadium, we had a horrible last year. Everyone got hurt. But my last game we won against the Jets, and I was able to walk around the stadium, say goodbye to everybody. And they're great people. And bringing that kind of excitement to Seattle for their football program, for their team, is really, I feel good about that. Because I've been in San Francisco, exciting. Green Bay, great. And now Seattle is that way right now, and you guys know that.
Yeah. Coach, I wanted to ask you a little bit about Coach Walsh. And I know, we hear a lot of talk from organizations in all sports about the importance of establishing a winning culture. And I think it's Mike Lombardi. He has said that Coach Walsh was one of the first to really think about a culture on a sports organization, kind of like it used to be something in businesses. From your perspective, was Bill Walsh an innovator in that regard as far as establishing what you would call a culture?
He was the best.
Yeah.
I've said this numerous times, that in that era, when I first came into the 49ers and so on, around the league and in pro football, it was stomp, crush, kill. It was, we're going to be tough. We're going to maul you. We're going to run over you, those types of things. Bill looked at the game a little bit differently. He taught the fundamentals and all that kind of stuff. But I always said, in a league full of blacksmiths, he was an artist. And he developed the team that way. It was different. But he had a very good rapport with the players. And just, he was hard on me. Oh, my goodness. Because
I was going to ask you about that, but I wasn't sure how to bring it up.
Oh, no. I mean, I've told a story, and if you've heard this, stop me. But at training camp, and I was the new guy. But he coached quarterbacks, Bill, in his early days. So he would go around to practice, and he wouldn't talk into a microphone or anything, but he'd write down little notes on these 3x5 cards. And, then at our meeting that night at 9:00, and he'd bring out the cards and go around the table and say, this guy, you did this, fix this, and this, your name's on here. And so you go over McKittrick, you have one, Norb Hecker, Sherm Lewis, you got, and then you get to me and go Holmgren, this, to boom. So then he would leave, and we'd do the game plan, practice times and stuff for the next day. He wasn't in the room. So then, but before we started doing that, Fred Von Oppen, who was the special teams coach, would say, okay, and he was keeping track of all the cards during training camp, who got the cards. Mm-hmm. So he goes, okay, tonight in third place after 5 days, we have Norb Hecker. You've had 9 cards, 9 corrections. Mm-hmm. In second place, Bob McKittrick, you've had 12. And the leader is Mike Holmgren. You've had 56. I go, thanks,
56.
So somehow, but you know what? If nothing else, I was a pretty good student, and I learned a lot from Bill.
Wow. That's good stuff from Mike Holmgren right there. Mike, I'm looking once again at, all the great quarterbacks you have coached. When you look at a quarterback head coach relationship, what's the key? Because we're seeing some guys now with tons of talent, but it's just not working out for them. How key is that relationship between a coach and a QB?
Oh, I think it's everything. It's everything. And I prided myself on that, realizing that they're all different. And you got to communicate. You have to communicate with them. And I think of 4 guys. I coached a number of quarterbacks, but if you have Montana, Young, Favre, and Matt Hasselbeck up here in Seattle, if you line them up, they're all very different personality-wise, very different. and their skill level and what they can do physically is a little different as well. So how do you adjust that? You play, listen, it's my job to get the best out of that player. Help him be the best player he can be. And that's not always the same language. With Favre, with Joe, he was like perfect. How he dropped, how his steps, all that stuff. You get to Favre, and it was really different. It was like the wild child,
right?
And so I tried to teach the same stuff to him, but then I figured this isn't the same guy. This is not going to work the same way. So you make adjustments, and I think the teams that do that, the coaches that do that, and the player understands that you have their best interests in mind, then you got a shot at success. You really do.
Coach, I asked Drew Bledsoe once, what is the hardest thing about being a quarterback that most of us have no idea about? And he said, the thing is, a quarterback has so many decisions to make. He said, even before the ball is snapped, he said, that's the thing people don't understand. From your standpoint, sir, what do you think is the single most important characteristic of what you'd say is a good quarterback?
Well, I always had three things, and I mean, I'm going to state the obvious here. To play quarterback in the National Football League, or anywhere, you got to be able to pass the ball, and so that now the analytic people, the guys that sit up there with the thick glasses and doing all the numbers. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, can he pass the ball? Is he accurate? Okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, his movement. He doesn't have to be a great runner like Steve Young, but his movement in the pocket and ability to avoid. And then third, but maybe most important, his judgment, and then his ability to absorb things and read defenses. Because people, you talk about, like Drew said, and you come up to the line of scrimmage, you're looking out there, and you say, okay, I believe it's cover this or whatever, cover whatever.
Yeah.
And your progression is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because that's the coverage. You take one snap. It's loud. Everyone's trying to kill you on the other side, and they're moving. The secondary is moving. They've changed coverages. So you have, in your mind, in 1 second, you got to change what your progression is. And that takes some time. That takes some time to get that. That's why young guys sometimes, it's hard in the beginning. But once they get it, I had all those guys, not Joseph because he had it, but Steve, and come in to me after about a year and a half and come into my house and go, Mike, I get it. I get it. And so it takes some time.
Wow. Mike Holmgren. Coach, final one for me. When you look at the landscape of the NFL, I went on the air, after week one and said the Chiefs are going to three-peat, if you will, as Super Bowl champs. Just handicap, some of the teams out there. Who are some of the biggest challengers to the Chiefs?
Well, I think you saw it last night. I didn't get to see much of the game, but Buffalo, is really good. In the AFC, in the AFC, they are really good. And I think you're going to see Baltimore now just kind of even out and get going again. There are a lot of good teams there. The Seahawks, I think after their start, we'll see when they start playing the tough part of their schedule to see what happens. But, the 49ers are going to be there. The teams that I'm just stating the obvious, the teams that are Green Bay, that's a really
Philadelphia
strong,
coach. You got to say the Eagles, right?
He's an Eagle fan, Coach.
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
I see how it is, Coach.
Did you say bagel? Did you say bagel?
Fly, Eagles, fly, Coach. Come on now.
I know. You know what? They're a talented team. They are really a talented team. Sometimes they're their own worst enemy, though, a little bit right now.
Yeah. You've been far too generous with your time, sir. Before we let you go, could you tell us what it means to you to be inducted in the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame on November 13th?
Well, I can't. It's hard to put into words. I've told many people, because every once in a while the NFL stuff comes up too.
Sure.
That when I got in, what would it be like? I said, when I got into this business, I thought I was going to be a high school coach for the rest of my life. I loved it. I loved teaching kids, young kids, and helping them in a lot of different ways. And then stuff happens. You just kind of happened and fell. Otherwise, I never thought I would do that, but I did it. And so the high school being honored in the Bay Area, where I was a high school coach for 11 years, and is very, very, very special. It brings back like that memory of the game against that I won in San Jose, and be able to have some of my coaching colleagues there that were high school coaches with me, and they were all old now, but to have them there, that's very special as well. So it's hard putting in the words, but I want to thank everyone who was involved in this thing. And some of my kids are going to go down there with me.
Oh, that's great. Coach Holmgren, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Congratulations on the honor. We hope to talk to you again soon.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, Coach.
Mike Holmgren, going to be inducted into the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame. That's November 13th, SAP Center in San Jose. It benefits Special Olympics Northern California and high school sports programs. I'll say what impresses me about that is there's a wonderfully accomplished, incredibly accomplished guy who's just a very humble guy.
Yeah, just a regular guy, right?
Yeah.
And I go back, like I said, when I was in La Crosse, Wisconsin, we used to drive the 3 hours to Green Bay Packer games all the time when Holmgren was coach. And I remember him back then. And, what's interesting about Mike Holmgren, really quick, he's going into the Hall of Fame here. They idolize him in Green Bay. They idolize him. Wherever he goes, he leaves a mark on that area.
Yeah, and I idolize him even more today after his answer to your Eagles.
I know, right?
Did you say bagel?
Bagel. Poor connection over here. Good stuff.
All right, when we come back, are all 5 unbeaten NFL teams, are they all legit? Well, look at that next on Sactown Sports.
Hi.